Welcome back to Lunaform, a 3D isometric construction management game where you play as a robot named Luna tasked with terraforming the moon. We now have a procedurally generated map with some craters and rock features, as well as a spaceship lander that Luna arrives on. We're already experiencing some pretty drastic frame rates, so this needs to be addressed before anything else. I started by testing the game with a variety of map sizes and terrain features. This helps me get an idea as to where the performance is going and what seems to be impacting it most. As expected, it's simply a case of the more voxels there are, the lower the performance. One of the simplest ways of optimizing performance is to reduce the number of textures the engine has to call upon. Each time something has a different look, it requires a different texture. A simple solution to this is to create something called a texture atlas. This is just a single image with all of the colours contained in a square grid. The game will load one single texture and reference different parts of it for different objects. This was not without its issues, but it didn't take long to fix. It also means that to try a different colour on an object, you simply change the reference point of the atlas. At this point in development, this won't have a huge impact on performance, but it helps future-proof the game as it grows. I wanted to test an idea I had of using a single low-poly mesh for the terrain. Rather than thousands of voxels, I would split a single mesh into a grid, raising and lowering the heights based on the Perlin noise, and then combining those splits back into one single mesh. After spending a lot of time on this, I just couldn't get it working in a way that I was satisfied with, and the more I went down this rabbit hole, the further away I felt like I was getting from the core art style of the game. I'm sure I could have made it look right eventually, but it just wasn't sitting right with me. There are voxel games out there that literally have millions of voxels and the game runs smoothly, so I know it can be done, I just need to find out how. At the moment, each voxel or cube is created regardless of whether you see it or not. Each voxel has 6 sides, with sides from neighbouring voxels occupying the same space, so this is incredibly inefficient. To resolve this, we can take groups of voxels and combine them into a single mesh, also known as a chunk, to remove all sides and corners that are not visible, then apply the same reference from the texture atlas. As usual, this gave some interesting results. Eventually I managed to get it working. Straight away I noticed a considerable increase from around 25 frames per second to around 55. When I applied the same process to the outer wall and reduced the number of rocks scattered around the terrain, I managed to get over 100 FPS. When I wasn't screen recording, that figure went up to 150 FPS. And when I tested a build on my wife's much newer MacBook Pro, it reached 180 FPS. This was a huge success. Next, we need to start adding some basic resources to mine. In order to terraform the moon, Luna will need to collect materials naturally found on location. There is a lot to do before life can survive there. First, an infrastructure needs to be in place to extract and process the raw materials. This will give us the building blocks for the various machines and buildings needed to begin terraforming. An atmosphere then needs to be generated by extracting oxygen from regolith and ice and releasing it along with CO2, methane and nitrogen. A thicker atmosphere will retain the heat normally lost to space and start to raise the core temperature of the moon. This increase in temperature will start to melt the polar ice, eventually creating rivers and lakes and providing moisture to the soil. Once the atmosphere and temperature are stable and there is enough surface water to sustain basic life, microorganisms can be introduced to process lunar regolith into arable soil. So, where do we start? The easiest resource to collect is lunar regolith. This is a surface level layer of fine dust that covers the entire moon and contains large amounts of oxygen, silicon, iron, aluminium, calcium, magnesium, titanium, helium-3, hydrogen and other rare earth elements. I've yet to decide how I want to implement the resources and the generation. I would like to find a way to procedurally generate these too, so that there is a variation in each resource. But for now we'll create a simple model in MagicaVoxel to act as a placeholder. I mocked up a basic UI in Photoshop that displays the core statistics I plan to include within the game, such as regolith, ice, metals and helium-3. There will be health and energy indicators along with temperature, water, vegetation and oxygen. we have build and research buttons, game speed, and lunar cycle indicators, as well as a mini-map and indicators for Lunar's personal progression. Overall of the landscape would be a grid system, hiding and displaying various parts of the map that can be revealed as the game progresses. So, I created a test environment on a small tile map with 4 areas that can be revealed or opened up. As you click on new areas to extend the map, the adjacent areas then become clickable. Again, not without its issues, but the way to look at programming is to see it as solving one problem after the other until there are no issues left, then give the game to someone else to find the rest. Although the mechanics of what I was trying to achieve worked, it wasn't enjoyable to play with. It felt repetitive and boring. This impacts the importance of user testing, also known as playtesting. I don't know at which point in development you should start asking others to playtest your game, if there is an industry standard approach, or if it's just a case of doing it when it feels right. My gut tells me that earlier is better, but I genuinely have no idea, so please let me know if you have any experience with either working with or being a playtester. I took a break from the test environment to revisit the lander model. I find when I get to a sticking point with one part of the project, sometimes tackling a completely different part can give you the mental space needed to come back with fresh eyes while still being productive and making some progress. I do have a plan mapped out for the game features. I've even split it into phases so I can prioritise core game mechanics first. This is also known as the minimum viable gameplay. What are the things that the game could not function without? Let's tackle these first and add the nice to haves later. One of the things I like about solo game development is that it gives you the opportunity to be both artistic and scientific. There has to be a balance between the things that you can see and the things that you can't see. I believe that the best video games have both. So, I grabbed some inspiration art and opened up MagicaVoxel. I wanted the lander to look more like a cargo spaceship, given that it would be used as the main hub for Lunar, performing a lot of the functions and also storing a lot of the materials. I imported the new model back into the test environment and wrote a script that randomly generated some resources in the new areas that were opened up. Again, although this worked, it just didn't feel satisfying or rewarding at all. And this is really important given that at the start of the game, the terrain and visuals are going to be at their least attractive or interesting due to the flat and empty landscape. So I scrapped the idea of having revealed grids for now. I may revisit it, but I think I'll try and come up with a better solution for exploration and discovery. I want to start looking at the mining mechanic, as this is another core gameplay feature, but first I need a way of tracking the resources that are collected, so I implemented the top section of the UI which will display the amount of each raw material. If we are not revealing new parts of the map by clicking on them, we need another way to discover resources. I decided on having the entire map be scannable by clicking on the lander. This scan will reveal new resources and can be upgraded as the game moves on. I wrote a script that spawns a small pile of voxels when the user clicks on the lander. I gave these voxels a different material so they stood out, and to my surprise, this actually worked really well first time. Again, I made sure to use public variables that I can change within the Unity expector for easy testing. Things like voxel size, number of voxels in the resource pile, the randomness of their placement, and the tightness of the grouping for each resource pile. After some tweaks, I found a set of values I was happy with. Next, I wanted some sort of visual indication that the user had scanned the environment. This is one of the most important elements of video game development. You never want the user to be left wondering if that action actually did anything. So, I wrote a script that creates a small green circle at the centre of the lander that expands outwards to fill the map and then fades away. Kind of like a submarine's sonar radar. This will need a bit of tweaking, and it's definitely something that will need further visual development later on, but for now it serves the purpose and works as intended. Next, using the thin 2D rectangle as some more particle effects, I gave Luna a pretty convincing mining laser. After tweaking the settings and giving them both a material that emits light, I wrote a simple script that only displays the mining laser when you right click on a resource pile and then hides it when you move Luna away. Lastly, I wanted another visual representation that mining was actually happening, so I spawned some individual voxels from the pile that pop out and bounce around before being removed once Luna collects them. This was as simple as giving Luna a radius around her and removing each resource from the game if they are within that radius. By giving it a small time delay, it gives the user enough time to see the resource pop out, with some landing and rolling far enough away that you will need to go and collect them after. I also implemented a script that updates the UI when the resource is collected. I really like this mechanic and the way it looks. It's strangely satisfying just moving around, mining and collecting resources. It's something that will need refining and revisiting, which I'm sure I will do over and over, but for now I'm really happy with this core gameplay mechanic. Let me know what you think, or if you have any other gameplay ideas that would be a good addition. But for now, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.